there are a couple things that I wanted to take care. You can turn the captions on if you like down at the bottom of your screen. And please do put your questions in the chat, and I can make sure that we get those questions answered. If I didn't say it already, which I may not have, my name is Lori Allen Requa, and I am at Laney in Oakland, and I am very happy to present a session on AI called Cultivating Critical AI Literacy and Digital Citizenship for Equity and Justice, by a colleague at UC Berkeley, Jennifer Elemen. If you would like to take over, Jennifer, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I am excited to collaborate and learn together about cultivating critical AI literacy in your context, how we build our own capacity for that and that of our colleagues and our students. And this is toward the ends of digital citizenship for equity and justice. So during this session, it will be brief, but I want to make sure you have all of the resources and are able to continue the conversation and collaboration beyond our time together today. So I'm providing my slides here at this tiny URL and QR code, which you will see again in the presentation. And Lori is very helpful with these links in the chat. So it is tinyurl.com/critical AI literacy. And so we'll start with a connector. And you have a couple of options. It'll be a Slido link. And I welcome questions and any additions, any thoughts and ideas that you have in the chat. And so first, just wanted to introduce myself, give you a little bit of background. I'm the Digitally Mediated Learning Coordinator at the 21 CSLA State Center at UC Berkeley School of Education. That's 21st Century California School Leadership Academy. We provide equity-centered professional learning to school leaders, and that includes district, school site, and teacher leaders in the transitional kindergarten through 12th grade space. And we cultivate educational partnerships with higher education, colleges and universities, and other nonprofit leaders and people in the education space to transform education for equity and social justice. So feel free to introduce yourself. I'd love to get to know you a little bit better. My name is Jennifer Elemen. Like I said, my pronouns are she, her, ea. So if you would share your name, pronouns, your role, organizational affiliation, what you'd like to learn from this session, and anything else you'd like to share in the chat now or throughout the session today, feel free to ask those questions. And yeah, and so already people are sharing about AI. And nice to meet you all. See Marie, Susan, Elizabeth, Emily. Great. Michelle, Mish, Bridget, Kim, Pam, Paul. Awesome. Thanks so much for being here. Rosaline. Great. It looks like we have instructors from different disciplinary backgrounds, subject areas as well. And I think that's what's really interesting. One of the very interesting things about AI is how it is cross-disciplinary. It's not just computer science. I was a social science teacher. I was a high school teacher for many years. I taught history, government, economics, and AVID. And then I taught in the credential program for social science teachers. And then I've been facilitating professional learning. I've been an administrator at the district and county office of education levels. And then now I've been at UC Berkeley going on 2 years. So it's great to learn from all of you, instructional designers, instructors. This is awesome. So getting into AI, how familiar are you with the topic of AI in education? We've got the Slido question here. So if you go to the QR code, scan that on your phone, or type into your browser slido.com and enter the code 1126835. You'll be able to answer this poll question. Are you not familiar, somewhat familiar? I've done some reading about AI in education. I've researched and practiced with AI in education, or I'm as expert as can be at this point. So we invite you to connect with the Slido poll and or just respond in the chat. What is most impressive about what you've heard or learned about AI, artificial intelligence so far? And what emotions does it bring up for you? There's been this hype, this AI gold rush, which has been really exciting for some people. It's also been terrifying for many people as far as what will the future hold with the power of artificial intelligence and now generative artificial intelligence, since it came on the scene in November 2023 with OpenAI and ChatGPT. And now we've seen it being developed into so many other spaces. People can create their own chatbots and other educational creation tools. And we want to know how trustworthy are these? How ethical are these? How safe are these? And how much should we be using them to design and facilitate learning with each other as educators and with our students? All right, so in the chat, I'm seeing thanks to everybody adding. Yeah, it's got some ability to create a video from a script in a minute. Yep, fears about our job security. I'm seeing that in the chat. Also excited for the possibilities. Some people are not quite sold on it yet. Large language models can be enabling, but for some English as second language learners, it seems more often to be a deceptive partner, at least as I've seen it operating. I want to keep opening my perspective on how it can help learners help themselves, given I can figure out clearer guidance. Still brainstorming, looking to see how others are using it. Brings up fear, trepidation, dismay. How it eviscerates the idea of using writing as part of the thinking process. Hurts my heart. And some people are excited about it. There's a debate. Some AI with restrictions in the classrooms may be the way to go. Enjoying it as a brainstorming tool, frightening. When it comes to the willingness to accept the output as truth, ethical concerns, copyrighted materials, cautiously optimistic. How will it affect our work at the Writing Center? Wow. So, and then the creation, misinformation. There are new courses to study AI. Productivity perspective, a little scary. Wow. So how can we let students know how they can be informed users as well? Yes. So that'll really be our focus. First, making meaning for ourselves, and then supporting students as well. Issues teaching chemistry is that students can get complete solutions very quickly. Okay. And then how valid are those quick answers? All right. So thank you so much for responding to the poll and responding to the chat. Okay, valid from what you've seen. So we've seen some valid, compelling responses coming out of generative AI, and some which are more questionable, especially in perpetuating misinformation and disinformation, the political landscape. Very concerning. So we have some resources. I just wanted to share so far what we've been working on at 21 CSLA with digitally mediated learning. We have these vignettes, and our question, our inquiry is how can TK through 12 education leaders, but really in all spaces, college, university as well, leverage digital tools and strategies to deepen learning and expand access and equity. And so we have this growing collection of vignettes to highlight some of these selected strategies like hybrid learning, podcasting, sketchnoting. And right now we're experimenting with these emerging technologies like generative AI. So I've written about it, just my exploratory thoughts in kind of a blog style format with citations on LinkedIn, which you'll see here, cultivating critical digital media, news, AI, and civic literacies for educational equity and justice, and then critical generative AI for educational equity and justice. So again, we're continuing to learn together. And so for this session, I'm wondering how might we, as educators, facilitate for critical AI literacy and digital citizenship, and center the voices of historically marginalized communities and increase equitable civic engagement with our use of AI. So a little bit of information here about how AI works. As it was mentioned, it is a large language model now that we've been talking about with generative AI, with tools like ChatGPT. And so there are some terms here explained about artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, large language models, chatbots. And so this is the computer science that goes behind generative AI. There's actually a free ebook that explores those pedagogical possibilities and productive tensions teaching with generative AI. So it's called Teaching and Generative AI. And so it is linked here. And so these resources are linked from the slide deck and on this Padlet. So you can do a deeper dive. But basically, what we've seen so far is this hype, right? All around what generative AI can do. Generative AI can help us as educators to customize learning experiences, lesson plan assist, provide feedback, grading support, classroom engagement, plagiarism checker, which we are now told to beware of because these are not trustworthy tools. They tend to discriminate against English learners. And they're supposed to be able to help us, these AI tools, with data-driven decision-making, content creation, early interventions, professional development. They're also supposed to be able to help students with time management and productivity, interactive learning, study assistance, writing support, research, practice assessments, critical thinking and prompting, content creation, programming assistance, and tutorials. It's supposed to be this empowering technology. So this is all of what we hear around the AI hype, all of these things that generative AI supposedly can do. And we see a lot of tech companies promising to deliver on these. So what we want to do is cultivate our critical lens to evaluate these tools for their ethical dimensions and centering equity and justice for our students as far as who do these tools help, harm, and how. We know that it is important to cultivate these skills for AI literacy and algorithmic literacy. We have some resources from the US Department of Education, Office of Educational Technology, explaining the need for algorithmic literacy and AI literacy, which applies to 21st century skills. There are some resources by several different organizations that kind of fall into this edtech broker space of digital promise, ISTE, and they are these foundations that get some funding from tech companies. And so it's really interesting to consider who's pushing these products and who profits. It doesn't mean they're all bad, but to really critically assess the promised benefits of these different tools as part of our AI literacy. Then there are also the instructional models to consider. So there's the TPAC framework, considering how we design instruction with the technological, pedagogical content knowledge. And now with AI, how does this change? And so the US Department of Education came out with what you see on the far left here is this model to center students and teachers, humans in the loop within an educational systems perspective, where we are centering students and teachers with the concerns of privacy and data security aligned to our vision of learning, AI that is inspectable, explainable, overridable, and minimize bias and promote fairness with our use. We're context aware and effective across contexts, and we promote transparency, accountability, and responsible use. So we see these guidance documents coming out and instructional theoretical frameworks as far as how to update our understanding of the use of edtech and digital tools now with generative artificial intelligence tools. The California Department of Education has also provided guidance. They have a web page called Learning with AI, Learning About AI, and they asked what AI skills can support educators and students. And now California is one of the growing number of states offering guidance on AI. And just last week, they came out with a CDE AI resource kit that emphasizes safe use, reviewing AI data collection and user privacy, making sure that the tools we use are in compliance with laws like CCPA and FERPA, the laws that protect students' privacy so that their data isn't used without their consent or sold. These extractive data platforms where students' data is sold and companies profit off of the use. It's very extractive, and so we need to be aware of what tools we're using, how we're using them, and how we're asking students to use them. And then also engaging students in these conversations, in these discussions around what the policy should be around, what the guardrails of AI should be in society and in education. So this would fall under these pros and cons, leveraging AI capabilities and critiquing inaccuracies or harm. So sometimes you'll see the reference to hallucinations. AI can hallucinate. And that's oftentimes a euphemism for harm that AI generates and impacts disproportionately to people of color and marginalized communities. There's the representational harm of how people are portrayed. And there's also the allocative harm, is who has access to using these technologies and how are they used, the power, privilege, positionality in accessing these generative AI tools. So we consider the social impacts, the presence of bias, societal impacts of AI, and build understanding of how AI systems work.
Jennifer, there's a question in the chat. What is CCPA?
It's one of the California laws around, so there are US and state laws around your right to give data to, or not give data to different companies. So like now when you go onto a website, you've probably seen this come up in the last few years where it asks you if you give the website permission to collect cookies. And that's basically the data. Like, do you want the website to have data on you? And then you can either say yes, accept all cookies, or no, and then choose which cookies you're willing to share. And when I'm given that choice, I say just, whatever the least amount of data sharing option is, I always click that box because I don't know what they're doing with it. I know that I'm visiting sites and I'm on social media apps that may be selling my data, but I try to be an informed consumer and share my data carefully. But the CCPA law made it so that now we provide informed consent when we do visit websites and engage with these digital platforms and tools. So CCPA and FERPA are some important laws to be aware of, especially as teachers and instructors saying like, oh, students should be using this tool or designing a lesson with particular tools, understanding what data is being asked to share from students, and then providing them options as far as, what if they want to refuse to participate and share their data with a particular platform? How will we provide options for that as well? Are we providing options for students to complete the assessment in different ways to make sure that it's transparent and that they're sharing their data with consent? Thank you for the people dropping those resource links in the chat. And just for updating our standards, just for K through 12 educators, we have new California standards for the teaching profession that just came out in 2024, and this one was added to incorporate digital literacy and citizenship into lessons, including technical skills, privacy safeguards, and the ethical use of social media, copyrighted materials, and artificial intelligence. I know many of the people here are in the college space, so knowing that this is a new standard for K through 12 teachers, it's also important for college instructors, faculty, and staff administrators as well. So ISTE, the International Society for Technology and Education, has standards for students, educators, and education leaders. And as education leaders, equity and citizenship advocates, they say leaders use technology to increase equity, inclusion, and digital citizenship practices. As educators, digital citizens, educators inspire students to positively contribute to and responsibly participate in the digital world. And for students as digital citizens, students recognize the rights, responsibilities, and opportunities of living, working, learning and working in an interconnected digital world, and they act and model in ways that are safe, legal, and ethical. So our approach is cultivating critical digital literacy, practices which lead to the creation of digital texts that interrogate issues of power, representation, and agency in the world, and critically interrogate digital media technologies themselves. which includes decoding, meaning making, analyzing, persona, and using, and critical digital pedagogy, and with our adult learners, andragogy, critical digital consumption, critical digital production, critical digital distribution, and critical digital invention. So being critical consumers, curators, and producers with these digital technologies and generative AI, having that critical lens is really important. And some of the scholarship on this asks some provocative questions, like Code for What? This is a book by Clifford Lee and Elizabeth Soap. So Code for What? Computer Science for Storytelling and Social Justice. And they've come out with this visual diagram of the critical computational expression framework that shows, again, this interdisciplinary approach: tech, art, justice, STEAM, critical computational literacy, civic imagination. And they write, schools and other learning spaces provide an opportunity to build the world we want. To do that, we've got to ask the big questions. What do we teach? Why are we teaching it? What persistent inequalities might we be perpetuating? In what ways do we serve some students and harm others? And how can our lessons be truly liberatory for all learners? So I've been grappling with this both and of the possibility of generative AI tools creating and empowering students to imagine the future and essentially be cyborgs with these technologies to co-create a more just future, and the potential harms of these technologies, and all of the ethical considerations that we need to debate and create guardrails with for responsible use as a society. So there are some supporting resources like the K-Poor Foundation, who sets a new vision for responsible AI and tech justice in K-12 education. And so they have the resources to support studying and utilizing an explicit racial and social justice lens to equip all students with the knowledge and resources to critically interrogate the ethical and equitable development, deployment, and impacts of AI, while simultaneously challenging, disrupting, and remedying the harms that these technologies can produce within individuals' lives, communities, and society at large. Other researchers like Leon Furs, who's in Australia, developed this framework for teaching AI ethics that considers the bias and discrimination, copyright, affect recognition, which is the AI ability to discern emotion by scanning images and content and videos. There's also the environmental, privacy, and labor concerns, truth and integrity, datafication, and power.
Jennifer, there's a question in the chat that's kind of related to this.
Yeah.
The question's from Marie, and it is the bias based on the data volume that is out there, with a follow-up of, so who trains and who makes the algorithms?
Yes. Absolutely. Who trains and makes the algorithms? And how do they make them? What's going into that algorithm, and who decides? So positioning our students not only as users of these tools, but we want them to become part of the diversity and the makers of these technologies, to be representative of populations of students that we serve. So we know that the content is currently skewed toward white male supremacy. We see that in images. We see the way that the representational harm perpetuates stereotypes of people of color, people with disabilities, women. And so how can we program these machines differently? And there is an attempt to do that. Many companies are working to train their machines and the algorithms to be less biased in these ways, and to be more reflective and responsive to mitigating stereotypes, but sometimes that can backfire as well. There are some examples of just what how testing and experimenting with these can kind of provide different harms. Like there's been accusation of like cultural appropriation in some cases when they try to make the content reflect diversity. And so sometimes that's not always the most sensitive or appropriate content either. So yes, it's an evolving field to try to mitigate the bias, discrimination, and harm from the generative AI tools. And some people try to, again, prompt engineer to make to actually skew the output to be social justice oriented. So again, you can never remove the humans from this. It's these machines, what they generate, always will need the human critical analysis of how it's produced and what's produced. So cultivating our critical generative AI literacy. Again, generative AI tools that create text with large language models, as well as images, video, code, and sound-based on vast data sets. We are trying to mitigate the representational harm and the allocative harm, and those are terms from Joy Boyle-Mwini, who wrote the book Unmasking AI, and she founded the Algorithmic Justice League. So we know generative AI produces potentially inaccurate information and harmful content. We also know inequities about AI, biased data sets, mostly white, Western, English language content, inaccessible to some locations, like ChatGPT is not available in Egypt. AI reproduces some oppressions historically with facial recognition, criminal justice, AI search engines, and it's extractive. It learns from users, takes data without permission. And this is from Bali 2023. So how are we actually using it in our classes? A lot of the concern has come in around how are students using AI to actually write essays for them. Is it plagiarism? Is it violating any copyright law? And then there are tools that try to detect this, and often those tools are not trustworthy and can cause more harm because there have been students who are falsely accused and breaking belonging in those cases and causing further harm. So there are researchers, again, Leon Furs, who's developing an AI assessment scale, a tool for Gen AI assessment, where in some cases we actually allow students to use generative AI. And in some cases, they're not allowed to use generative AI. And then there are some cases in between where you may allow students to use AI for specific purposes. For example, you may allow students to use Grammarly or other AI editing tools in their writing. You may allow students to use tools like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude for ideas and structure. Or you may allow students to actually fully create videos or music with AI. There's a song app called Suno AI where students can create songs. And there's Midjourney where people are creating videos. Again, there's concern about this. There are actual lawsuits from artists saying that their content is being scraped from the internet without their consent. So there's still laws, legislation, lawsuits to be determining some of the effects of these tools. In the meantime, these are some ethical considerations for teachers and designers of assessments. Yes, so so thanks for adding that in the chat. So another AI critical organization is DARE. So we talked about the Algorithmic Justice League. And then somebody put in the chat here, the DARE Institute. They're also critical of AI. So to get that full perspective, range of perspectives around, we see the hype coming from companies that are selling these technologies and tools, and then to really be immersed in the criticism of the ethical and equitable and social justice concerns around the use of these tools. So yes, the DARE Institute and the Algorithmic Justice League. Also, Civics of Technology is another resource and group of scholars critical of AI. So back to the assessment scale. Again, this is from Leon Furs. And then there's also this merging of the use of AI with the SAMR model. So the SAMR model is for technology integration, and it came out by Ruben Puentedura, and it actually asks us to consider how we are integrating technology for learning. Are we using technology as just a substitution? That's the S, or augmentation, that's the A, or modification, that's the M, or redesign, so that's the R. So are we, completely revamping what students are able to do and show what they know with the use of technology, with project-based learning? And can AI be a part of that, or to what extent should AI be a part of that? And in what cases is the simple digital minimalist approach the most humanizing and deeper learning experience that we could design? So yeah, a lot to consider here. Thanks for the SAMR AI link in the chat, Lori. Yes. So thinking about educators, instructional design, facilitating deeper learning, and then also thinking about what do leaders need to be aware of with extractive tech and the impact of AI in education. We've referred to some state and local policies. You have an organizational or institutional policy on AI. Usually your IT department is working on this, so refer to that. And then there's also, keeping up with the news around these. Like I said, there are lawsuits. One example is the San Mateo County Office of Education suing some social media companies around the alleged harm and impact on young people using those apps, which also use some AI. There are some AI embedded tools that target certain users to be drawn to certain content. And then how are local decisions made? How are the edtech companies, edtech brokers influencing our use of these tools? So a couple of linked articles here on these concepts of pipeline philanthropy, which I learned about from the Civics of Technology conference, which was a free virtual conference in 2023. And this recent journal article about edtech brokers' influence. So there are certain organizations that help to choose which tools to use. And so just thinking about, okay, how do they actually help us organize the evaluation criteria for which tools we'll use for teaching and learning? And then for cultivating our own practice. There's a Padlet and resource linked here. So again, it's big business here, generative AI in the edtech market. And there's been this global generative AI in the edtech market growth over the last year and a half now, and then there are projections for it continuing to grow. So how do we critically assess, aligned to our beliefs and values, the value of edtech, digital tools, generative AI tools? Yeah, everything's linked from the deck, but feel free to add to the chat. How do you determine which new tools to bring in? How do we assess their value?
Actually, I have this question. How do we do this? Like, I don't have enough time to barely like get done what I need to get done. And there's so many, like you've provided us with so many great links to so many resources to question these things. How do we do this work?
Yeah, we need some time, right? Like we need the time to explore and make meaning. Okay, what kinds of companies are we defining as edtech? Do we mean platforms like Canvas, publishers? I think in this case, I think all of those could fall under educational technology, right? Like they're providing educational technology-based platforms. But I think in this case, I'm thinking specifically about like generative AI tools, right? Like ChatGPT or some of that I mentioned that can create generative content. The new ones that we're actually considering, right? Like, will we allow, let's say you create an assessment for students, a project, will we allow them to use generative AI tools? And so we don't have to have these answers figured out. Again, it's a conversation. It's the beginning of a conversation here. And we certainly won't have the answers to these questions in the next 9 minutes. But it's something to think about. And we can start exploring. And so we can start exploring some of these tools. You can just test out one and critique an AI tool of your choice. And on the user agreements or frequently asked questions, FAQs, you know, what is it that these tools promise to do? What are the potentials for education use? And some of these could actually lend themselves pretty well to providing greater access and possibly assistive technologies, helping students with disabilities and all learners to provide greater access, inclusion, and engagement for learning. How might you use the tool? How do we prompt it? Some are really easy and free. But again, when it's free, what is it that they're getting? How are they making money off of it if it's claiming to be free? But then asking who may be harmed by the process and or output generated, and what recommendations do you have for potential users of this tool? So there's an example activity deck that you might actually use, let's say, with colleagues in a department collaboration or professional learning community, where we actually practice testing out some of these tools. So some of these have actually been around, and some of them are AI tools, not necessarily generative AI. Some of these are generative AI. They actually produce new content, and some of these just have AI technologies embedded with, again, like that artificial intelligence capability. And thanks people chiming in the chat. Yeah, well, how are we approaching this? Thanks for adding those ideas here. Keeping it student-centered. Colleges need to have designers who specialize in AI. Yeah, so many colleges do have instructional designers who support and also centers to support students with assistive technologies, writing supports. They're hopefully keeping up with the AI tools and can be great thought partners and collaborators to support this conversation. Yeah, who are trusted guides? Always start with an actual solution you want to address, a challenge in your teaching. A lot of what is happening now is exploding right now are a lot of solutions looking for an actual challenge. Oh, okay, that's a great point. Yeah, looking at privacy, licensed tools. Yeah, what is allowed by your college or university. Some might actually be banned, and if you don't know it yet, you should try to find out like what is actually allowable, and if there are any that are not allowed at this point at your institution. That's important to know. So I mentioned the importance of critical digital literacy, critical digital citizenship as an aspect of civic engagement and preparing for the upcoming election. There's a new organization called truemedia.org that is offering to help us decipher deep fakes. We know that these are influencing people with misinformation and disinformation. A lot of generative AI content intended to deceive and influence voters. And so it's important to become aware of these. So this website may help us to do that, but it's actually really challenging to decipher these deep fakes, especially as the technology progresses to look more and more real. So there are some additional resources here, like the News Literacy Project has this infographic and 6 things to know about AI. That generative AI tools are not objective or reliably factual. They're also not all bad. Content is easier than ever to create and fake. For example, between May and December 2023, websites hosting AI-created false articles increased by more than 1,000%, ballooning from 49 sites to more than 600, according to NewsGuard and the Washington Post. AI also signals a change in the nature of evidence, trying to decipher what's credible. And reputable sources matter more than ever. So they have an infographic and video on that. Resources to be informed, not misled. And then there's some additional research. Again, Joy Buolamwini's book, Unmasking AI. There's also The Coming Wave by Mustafa Suleyman, who is also the new CEO of Microsoft. He's the co-founder of DeepMind and Inflection AI. And then there are also some journal articles. This one is Towards Social Generative AI for Education, Theory, Practices, and Ethics. And Joy Buolamwini says, slow down and fix things. As a counter to that move fast and break things tech mantra. This is a great video to watch as an example of her counter demo. And she defines a counter demo is to make a social justice demonstration with digital media in opposition to another dominant and oppressive demonstration or demo. And so this is an example here of some images I tried to create with Microsoft Designer text to image generator. And I prompted it with scholars and community leading the future of AI, which you'll see these 4 pictures on the left, and then Black, Latinx, and Indigenous scholars and community leading the future of AI on the right. And so these might be perceived as empowering images, or they might potentially be harmful. So how could we actually practice this with other educators, and in what cases is it appropriate to practice these with students to also cultivate their critical AI literacy and digital citizenship? So just thinking about all of this, I created this diagram here, thinking about the AI hype, cultivating our AI literacy, understanding, okay, what do these tools actually do? How do they work? And then that critical AI literacy, and toward decolonizing AI and using strategies like counter demos. And Stephanie T. Jones asks questions like this that inspire our thinking. What would an AI system that supports Black life look like? What are your dreams for AI and Black life? And how can we build systems that don't perpetuate anti-Black racism? And other scholars like Alexandre Pasquale remind us to historicize technology and the role of AI in society. There are several concerning uses of AI and their risks, like predictive analytics, school surveillance, plagiarism checkers, AI tutors, writing and monitoring AIEPs that we just need to be aware of. And several resources. This is a multimedia guide, Ethical AI for TK through 12 education leaders that we developed in the 21 CSLA Bay Area Regional Academy, and then some resources connecting to critical digital media and AI literacy. So for our last minute, we'll just ask people to share out or add to the chat. What's a key takeaway for you from today? Which resources might be helpful for you? And what questions are still lingering for you? All right, and I see some questions in the chat as well. What are trends that you're watching in the industry overall? That there is less talk of guardrails. Yeah, it does seem to sway on the side of the hype, right? And that's why our conversations around cultivating critical AI literacy are so important. And so some people who are critical of AI might just be automatically categorized as Luddites, people who just reject all technology. And that's not the case. We're just saying, let's, like Joy Boyle-Weedy said, let's slow down and fix things. Let's not just be excited to move fast, break things, and profit. Because who profits and how and at whose expense? So it's not being anti-tech, not being anti-AI. It's being critical consumers, curators, and producers of technology as educators, and for our students to be empowered with those critical thinking skills and competencies as users of technology and digital citizens. And then hopefully they'll also be empowered to not only be the consumers of technology, but the producers, so that the tech companies, the producers, the owners, the algorithmic, computational computer scientists and programmers, they actually reflect the communities that they're intending to serve, and who are actually centering the most marginalized students in our case, that need the most support. Yes, it's exciting how social justice scholars are responding to AI. Yes, AI, a woman. Yes, when you get a chance, we want to watch that video. It's just only 5 minutes long to show how Joy Boyle-Weedy made that counter demo. Hmm. All right, we have a few more minutes. So any other questions, feel free to ask. Yeah, so this concept of counter demos is new. Thanks for adding that to the chat. And providing some contact information here, as well as the link again to the slide deck that has all of these hyperlinked resources. And some additional resources for you here. We have an upcoming webinar on May 15th with Tyrone Howard. Dr. Tyrone Howard from UCLA will be presenting at the 21 CSLA Research Practice webinar on his new book, Equity Now. So we encourage you to join us. And we also have some research publications at 21cslacenter.berkeley.edu. And join us on our website, social media channels, the Equity Leadership Now podcast, and subscribe to our newsletter. We also have a page, resource hub on California Educators Together. And thank you so much, everybody. It was great to spend this time with you. Feel free again to keep in touch, and we'll continue the conversation and collaboration. Thanks for all that you do, supporting students and our communities.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Jennifer. Oh my gosh, I have so much crazy new information to go check out. I'm excited and overwhelmed, but I think it's important for all of us to keep this information in mind and keep moving forward. I have been putting as much of your links in the chat that I can. So the 21 CSLA Center at UC at Cal is in the chat. And just to remind all of you that all these recordings will be on the YouTube channel for our equity conference. So if you want to watch this again, you can go do that. And it would be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. And then the program at a glance is in the chat if you want to go to the next thing or hang out with us in this room and watch the next video. And then if you're on social media, here's all the social media stuff. And I see Kevin put the conference playlist. Thank you, Kevin. Are there any last questions for Jennifer? This has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I will stop the recording then.